minutes into the conversation, I see Soilless Farm Labs and Slay Farmer already looking at a memorandum of understanding there in terms of getting the youth to work. I must commend Iwineti for being the conduit of possibility. Of course, I'm sure that the legal teams are going to be comparing notes between the two teams so that we can make Africa great in our lifetime. So on that note, let me delve into just a bit of introduction. What may be lesser known beyond the blockchain baron hat that I wear is that I was actually raised not by one, but by two generations of hardworking farmers. My late grand was a coffee farmer, and my mom, who's still with us, is a crop farmer. Just this morning, she was busy sending me updates via technology and telling me that my wife and I have to head back to the village to ensure that we pick up the beetroots. They are about to actually be ready for a harvest in just 2 weeks. So yes, so even though I'm in this big city, I still get those notifications from the village. So my work ethic is thanks to those two industrious women that shaped not just my understanding of agriculture, but my appreciation of the type of African leader I am now emerging to be. And of course, I also got to learn scale from government and corporate. My days of corporate are behind me, but I got to appreciate scale because the scale or growing is an extreme sport. Growth in business is an extreme sport that I'm hoping that our presence in agriculture is going to shake up things to ensure that not only do we bring technology in this space, but we reawaken the muscle memory in the African DNA that growth should be our heritage. So yes, thanks to my Deloitte days, I got to be part of a deal that I got to spearhead where we moved a balance sheet for one firm that was our client. We moved them from 0 to 5 billion in just 3 years. And on that note, let me also give honor where honor is due. Kenneth, you opened our discussion by saying impact makers are here. Very, very interesting. And I'm delighted that Africa is changing in my lifetime because today is not just law, it's not just biochemistry, it's not just economics and other, social enterprise that are present and technology, but it's also just seeing how we are impact makers first who happen to be in agriculture. We are not in agriculture and trying to make impact. That's one of the things that I noticed. The word arable land or the phrase arable land came out, I think, about 3 or 4 times so far in this discussion by my fellow impact makers. And I want to acknowledge that the way it came out, the way it came about, and the strong emphasis on empowerment, empowering others. Farmer Okbole mentioned empowering or equipping the 1,000, and of course, Slave Farmer, that's what she exists for, in order to take others across with her. And of course, Esther mentioned how she keeps making these trips out there to the Netherlands to go and bring best practices to not just impact her farm and her farming interests, but to impact Africa. So I'm in good company. I have a note to make on that before I look at numbers, is that perhaps we shouldn't settle at Africa being home to 60 or 70% of the global arable land. That statistics is comforting, but it is saddening. You see, I'm going into numbers now. It is saddening to see that Africa being home to 40 million farmers. The sad part is that 33 million of those are actually remaining small, and they are smallholder farmers. I would also like to call them hand-to-mouth farmers. So they're not in the room now, and that breaks my heart, because here in the room is impact makers that are appealing to those 33 million to say, move over. Farmer Samuel mentioned that, listen, if you put structure and systems in place, you are going to cross the great divide of results, focusing on growing that one tree or that one plant to now showing results to go into exponential growth. That's comforting, and we need more of those 33 million to move over to the growth side. So I put it to you, my fellow Africans and our global audience, that we need to go beyond being comfortable with the arable land. We need to now begin cultivating arable minds. Worth repeating. Let's shift from arable land towards arable minds, because if the land is fertile, but the mind is infertile, then the Africa we want is not going to emerge. That's what I wanted to make a quick comment on that. And I believe that it was slave farmer, if I recall, who kept focusing on we need not be consumers only. We need to really, really get innovative and shift our mindset. I put there that my family believes in equipping Africa to become more prosumers, meaning we need to produce as much as we can what we consume, which is why the economists had to find kale, or rather had to grow it when importing it was not attractive. So just two numbers on that note, 10 billion. 10 billion. That's one number I want to put out there. That's what the African Development Bank is now putting into the ground across the next 5 years or so to bring about infrastructure enabling resources to enable agriculture. The next number, 78 million. That is how much big banks and corporates have been spending in South Africa alone to honor resources, to honor results produced by startups, by either acquiring a slice of the pie or even buying them out. So if young people out there are not taking agriculture seriously, checks are exchanging hands, transactions are happening without you, my fellow young person, being at that economic dinner table. Last but not least, numbers on the e-farmer end. Just being after launching in 1.5 months ago, we already have 4,000 buyers on our platform, and we already have 5,000 farmers waiting to be vetted through our Know Your Farmer methods. So we actually have more demand than we thought. But in short, I'm grateful to see that my fellow impact makers are leading Africa to cross over the divide that kept same old methods keeping Africans to have a hand-to-mouth existence either in farming or other sectors. We start things very well, but can we really tap into growth? And with these impact makers around me, I'm already making notes and I'm celebrating that impact is here. And the Africa we want is materializing in my lifetime. Thank you, Kainton. But they really were troubled. Why are you not letting the animals out? And it's interesting that in not letting the animals out, she actually showed them that she needs to let them, the chiefs and the fellow farmers, she needed to let them out because they were trapped in this myopic existence of missing the bus when it comes to value addition, when it comes to industrialization within agriculture, when it comes to adjusting to market expectations. So she didn't just let her fellow farming peers out, even though most of them are men. She also let the women out because for too long, I'm a co-founder with my wife, Iwineti Kubyane, who's a co-founder on the eFarmer app, and we believe in not just empowering women, but enabling women to empower women. That's what we believe in. And it's interesting that in her attempt to answer the confused and really, really confounded local chiefs, in a way she was saying, I'm letting the women out. Let the animals stay indoors where they're getting all the vaccination and all the nurturing and all the care, but the women must be let out of this myopic, little worlds that in a men's world, they are told you can't do this, you can't do that. Then if we're going to be stronger together, then we need both genders and the family unit that she emphasized on. We need the family unit at that economic dinner table so we can start talking continuity, we can start talking legacy. And of course, on the side of slave farmer, I'm taking lots of notes. I've noted here that she was speaking about what breaks her heart really when these smallholder farmers are being robbed. They are being robbed there's no word. You see, in Africa, we can't use this intelligent word. Well, they are realizing less value. No, they are being robbed by middlemen. They are being robbed in broad daylight, and the robbery must stop. It's interesting because the president of Uganda recently apologized about the role that our fellow Africans played in enabling the slave trade. It's interesting. We're talking farming, not slavery, but it's interesting that our farmers are enslaved by the middlemen today in what we can call modern day slavery. And part of that is enabled by perhaps lack of policy. And I believe that there's a lot of things that slave farmer said. She shares knowledge. She tries to really awaken what is the real-time price now of your particular commodity or crop. I believe that slavery, economic slavery, is possible when our farmers are not thinking about best practice elsewhere. They're not thinking about how this has been done. So I'm glad to be here. And on that note, what are we doing to solve the problem? I'm going to touch on my experience. In this space, getting funding was very key in order to now speak economies of scale. And I'm very glad that my team and I did not only raise funding once, but we raised funding twice. So my wife and co-founder Iwineti Kubyane just did a chat on another agricultural conversation just last week on how particularly women can raise funding within the farming space. You see, having raised funding twice from multinationals, one in Switzerland, the other one in the US, she's now passing the baton. So that's something that audiences can look out for. It's already out on the relevant platforms. So funding for us was key because on our own, we can only raise that one tree in terms of doing something minuscule. And technology is an extreme sport. Technology is an extreme sport and rather an expensive sport. So let's come together to ensure that we are stronger together. So make sure that you clarify your vision. You do all the good stuff that if you rewind this conversation, for those of you that are seeing it later, back to where Farmer Obole said about structure systems, get that good stuff because we had to do that in order to raise funding. And talent. Make sure that you are clear on the type of talent you need. It has been a challenge. We wanted eFarmer app to be made by Africans for Africans, just out of the principle of it. But it doesn't mean that attaining that African talent with an arable mindset, a mindset ready to show up when needed, a mindset ready to find a way to win, a mindset ready to play well in a team, not be the star of the show. If it's not about me and it's not about my wife, if my wife and I are not making it about ourselves, we're making it about the needs of farmers, then why should a software engineer come and hawk the attention and say, it's all about me? Why should a data scientist enter the room and say, you know me, yeah? You know me. Today, I showed up for work. Why don't you clap for me? We're not going to clap for you. What we should be clapping for is for each family that we drag out of that hellhole of economic slavery. We should clap for that. We should clap each time we bring farm produce from a smallholder farmer, from a semi-commercial farmer, from a commercial farmer to the shelf where it belongs, or even better, direct to your doorstep. So we clap for that. So we are very clear on our clapping policy. We don't clap because we are clever. We don't clap because we know all these fancy things. We don't even clap because our company is situated in the richest square mile in Africa. We don't clap. That's just a by the way fact. But building digital bridges that connect people so they can trade. Those that are not in the room, enabling the eFarmer app to bring them in the room and keep them in the room so that we can do vetting, we can know your farmer, we can do compliance and ensure that just because you are supporting fellow Africans, that should not mean that you're buying a scam. Or even as Farmer Esther said, does not mean that you have to chew on this meat all day long. You go like, is this horse meat or is this cow? No, I'm confused. That's where blockchain comes in. eFarmer is not just an e-commerce app, it runs on the blockchain. Blockchain is a source of truth. I'm not going on all the technicalities. You're welcome to read all about it later because of time. But blockchain ensures that the produce you have on your dinner table is from where it claims to be from, is farmed by who it claims to be farmed by, and all the stuff that went into it is known to you. There is no darkness somewhere or any hidden figures. The only time I enjoy hidden figures is when I watch the movie Hidden Figures. We don't want any hidden figures in our value chains across agriculture. Hidden figures must go, and middlemen must go and find another spot to play with. They must leave our farmers alone as we connect the farm to your doorstep. Thank you.
Wow. Awesome.
Once again, I'm very grateful firstly to our audiences, and I'm grateful to the visionary and founder of Iwineti Africa for being a conduit that doesn't just bring African countries together, but the very best of Africa's thought leaders in the same room at the same dinner table where this conversation can be had. I'm very grateful also to my fellow impact makers for I've made perhaps about 14 pages of notes just from this discussion, because if Africa is going to move forward, we need to take seriously the shared insights by our fellow Africans. My parting note from my side, there is a conversation that I overheard this one time, and some of you might have overheard it as well, because it's written in the good book, where a person asked the other person, I won't go into the details, about what's that in your hand? What is that in your hand? Funny enough, the person asking was asking a shepherd. We're asking basically a livestock farmer, what's that in your hand, my dear shepherd? And the shepherd said, well, it's a stick. And long story short, before you know it, as the good book goes on to say, that same stick was used to industrialize that space that it was in, to pivot what do you call it, the shaping of a bridge that saved 3 million, a nation of 3 million people. I won't delve into that for now, but those of you that follow the good book, you're welcome to lean a bit on that. I want to close my parting note with numbers. Today, Africa is home to 600 million mobile devices that are smartphones. So I just borrowed some phones from my team to illustrate mine, and of course my wife's phone. So if we were to ask ourselves a question, those of us that are in agriculture, what's that in their hands? Those are not phones. Those are 650 million digital malls. So dear farmer, if your crops cannot get to the typical retail shelf because it's crowded or because of some reason you can't access it, remember, our fellow Africans, we are moving around with retail shelves in our hands. What's that in your hand? It's possibility. What's that in your hand? It's a retail shelf. What's that in your hand is what could move Africa forward out of the archaic days into the Africa we want. And maybe for argument's sake, some of you may not be aware, every quarter, 50 million phones are shipped to Africa from around the world. I'm looking forward to a time where each of those phones can be turned into a connected Africa. And you mentioned 2035 earlier on, Kenneth. That is not too far away. In about 599 Saturdays from today, Africa will not only be at 2035, but we will also be more than 2 billion. I believe it was Farmer Esther who mentioned that other nations, or it might have been Slave Farmer who mentioned that even first world countries are battling food security. Would that be a food insecure Africa, where 2 billion people are either battling to get food at all or get good quality food from the likes of Farmer Esther? That's a question. But that question we can answer it today, because as Farmer Esther said, the future is here. Thank you kindly.
Wow, thank you very much, Shadrack.